Till that the FBI and CIA recruit heavily from the Mormon population because they are usually cheaper to do a security clearance on. They often speak another language from their mission trips and they usually have a low-risk lifestyle. The military also recruits a lot of Mormons as translators for the same reasons. The church has already trained them in other languages. They tend to be squeaky clean and can get top clearances. Not only this, letter agencies have on at least one occasion sent people to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, UT to try and get insights into how they teach languages to missionaries so effectively. I can only give my own experience as a missionary, but I spent 12 weeks there learning Russian, and just general here's how to be a missionary stuff. By the time I left, I understood the grammar and read the alphabet, but boy howdy. I learned how to speak Russian by being dumped in the middle of Russia and told to find people to baptize. Took a good 6 months of constant, frustrating communication deficiency, but I got there eventually. I don't think there is any classroom approach that will give you that kind of end result in 6 months plus 12 weeks. Just trial by fire and removing all chances to not speak Russian. Doubt I could ever learn another language without being subjected to the same lack of alternative options. The same can be said for summer guides at American, Alaskan, cruise ship ports of call. The majority are Mormon students recruited from Bayou. No smoking, no drinking, no cussing and no trouble. Brilliant. Anecdotal but had a Mormon neighbor who we thought was an accountant for the 20 years we knew him until he retired and revealed he had been in the C.I.A. Nobody asks questions when you're an accountant. As a CPA, I should try to reveal that I've actually been working for the C.I.A. at my retirement party. Also, perfect disguise. They can walk through a busy street and no one will bother them. Excuse me, Mom, do you have 2 minutes to talk about the environment? Deep Mormon state. Yep, no arguments there. That sums up a nice chunk of the missionary experience. I was a Mormon missionary in Asia 30 years ago. I was asked several times if I was CIA. Brooklyn 99 did an absolute amazing bit with that. Only in developed nations. In a lot of developing nations, the primary activity is just being useful to the community and you stay very, very busy and are generally well liked. Interesting. I do know more than one Mormon in the State Department. Like a lot actually. I have a drinking problem? Fuck you, Todd. You're a Mormon. Next to you we all have drinking problems. Former embassy IT guy here. Not sure about those departments, but can confirm State Department has a ton of Mormons. This reminds me of the opening scene in the movie Burn After Reading. John Malkovich's character is shit-canned from his job because they say he's an alcoholic. He looks over at his colleague and says, "You're a fucking Mormon." Fuck you, Peck, you're a Mormon. Next to you we all have a drinking problem. Best line of that movie. Tried watching that movie as a teen, and couldn't get into it. 10 years later I watch it on Netflix, and loved it. Well? What did we learn? Don't do it again, I guess. I'll be fucked if I know what we did. That movie is perfection. Oh shit, that line from Burn After Reading makes even more sense now. Fuck you, Peck, you're a Mormon. Compared to you we all have a drinking problem. It's an inside joke at some agencies that they need to do special polygraph tests for Catholics, because they've been taught to feel guilty about everything. Am former Catholic, can confirm lol. As a former Catholic, guilty. Between being raised Catholic, and my mom abusing the privilege, I found that I'm immune to guilt trips because I was raised to feel guilty all the time anyway. I told my mom and she said something along the lines of, how can my son be so cold-hearted and morally bankrupt that he doesn't feel guilt for anything anymore? I just shrugged, lol. As a Catholic, this is my fear if I ever do cool things, lol. Every answer will be flagged. I heard that since polygraphs measure how your response is different to different questions, if you force your physiology to react the same way to every question, it won't show any lies. The easiest way to do that is to clench your asshole when they ask you a question. They don't work anyway, BTW, but they especially don't work if you do that. As a talent acquisition professional, I can tell you, they're also heavily recruited for sales roles. The simple reason is they're very used to knocking on doors and handling rejection. Mormons make great sales professionals. This is actually an even better reason to hire them for policing intelligence. You need people who are totally cool with approaching a potentially hostile stranger and striking up a conversation. It's also why many companies put their customer service call centers in Utah. It's easier to find people who speak second languages there. I worked at a call center, outbound survey data collection, for a year or so right after I got home from my mission. Generally they paid on a sliding scale from $8 per hour to $11 per hour depending on your productivity. Because I was the only person in the building who spoke Russian, they just put me at $12 without regard to productivity. I think I did something like 6 Russian calls the entire time I worked there. At F.B.I, one of my professors was a staffer on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and in the CIA under George H.W. Bush. During the Cold War, the USSR actively and constantly used honeypots, hot Russian women, against CIA agents. He was part of the interview process for CIA agents caught up by USSR honeypots. He told us that a popular place for USSR assets to try and snag CIA agents was on the train subway to D.C. He claimed that was one reason why the CIA liked LDS Mormon agent. China does the same thing to U.S. agents today. If a young Chinese woman starts flirting with your middle-aged classified clearance self, it's not because you're handsome. Mormonism is cool and all, but cussing and coffee are cornerstones of my lifestyle. I have days where all I drink is Baileys and coffee. I mean, that's what it is at the start, but I only refill it with Baileys. As long as I refill it before it's empty, it still has some coffee in it though, so it's not a lie technically. As a Mormon, I cuss all the time and have quite the caffeine dependence. Not coffee, though, I think it's disgusting. You'd be surprised how many Mormons have a Diet Coke habit that's bordering pretty heavily on addiction. My mom being one of them. I worked with a Mormon woman in a multilingual department last year. She spoke 7 languages. She would jump to one desk and speak Romanian, then to another and speak German. I'm English and my partner is Italian, and I can barely order an espresso when we visit his family in Italy. Not only F.B.I. and C.I.A., but large, baby boomer generation corporations. If you're looking for keep your nose to the grindstone and don't ask questions people, likely married, no drinking drugs, ready to settle down and put down roots, Mormons are a safe bet. Yes. One of my PhD friends is Mormon and that girl fucking grinds all day every day and doesn't complain. Married right out of college, straight into a PhD with multiple publications in undergrad, did the full course load before making her husband dinner every night, no vices, 2 cats, has multiple research fellowships, and plays the piano, does weekly things and Spanish for her ward. I admire the work ethic. But she refused to come to our gender course the day we were discussing BDSM and I had to laugh. If I had 5 kids waiting at home, you wouldn't be able to drag me out of the office. Well, I'm chanting my religion. Huh. Weird. All the hardest drinkers and druggies I've known growing up were all Mormon. Kinda hard to blackmail someone when their worst vice is an occasional cup of coffee. When I was on the Mormon mission in Peru, people there thought I was a C.I.A. agent. And they don't drink or get high. Why do you take 2 Mormons when you go fishing? If you take just one, they'll drink all your beer. Went to an F.B.I. recruiting seminar for scientists, and I'll just say this, they want to recruit people who are literally trained to question everything, and then ask them to question nothing. With the F.B.I. too, the biggest kicker is the drug policy. F.B.I.'s marijuana policy is absolutely ridiculous. When they mention the drug policy, I think it's no MJ in like 5 years, 3 years, regardless if it's legal in your state. Half the room burst into laughter, stood up, and walked out. They also were super hostile to a bunch of scientists asking why the F they still use polygraphs. Also, emo, F.B.I. recruitment is super skewed towards single-income households. If you're an agent, you get almost no control over where you live, so your partner better have a job that's not location locked. Or no job at all. Also on call weekends, holidays, etc. F that. I've got that in my normal job with intellectual freedom. This is exactly the wrong way to recruit people anyways, and it shows. I've dealt with the FBI a few times as well as a few other agencies, and the major problem is that cases are often boring, and they have recruited people who are interested in action, which means they become disinterested in their jobs, and often don't even know what they are supposed to be looking for. For instance, the largest Medicare fraud in history went undetected even after multiple reports, because the agents just weren't very interested and thought nobody would do something like that. They didn't think someone would throw away a good job by committing fraud. It wasn't logical to them. Every single time I have reported something, they ask why would someone do something like that? And they ignore the case for a few years until someone dies or there is some major crime that draws their attention. Then they suddenly believe. In my experience, if they want to recruit better agents and analysts, they need to go after people who are used to incredibly boring jobs like data entry. Digging through evidence is boring to agents who want to see action, but it's quite exciting to someone who had been doing a pointless mind-numbing data entry job for years. What most agents despise, people like that would be excited to do. Secondly, don't hire people who are dismissive. Too many crimes are ignored because they don't make sense to the agents. This is the wrong attitude because criminals are impulsive, they are not logical. So just because something is illogical doesn't mean it's not happening. Nearly every major case the FBI ignored was because they didn't comprehend why something was happening, so they assumed it was not. Right now they are recruiting exactly the opposite kinds of people than they need. My college roommate double majored in computer science and chemical engineering and graduated second in our class of 1,100. He was a brilliant machine, who also smoked a shit ton of pot, we both did. He was being heavily recruited by the Goldman Sachs and Googles of the world his senior year but wanted to do something meaningful and join the FBI, but they just wouldn't make an exception for him because of the weed. He tried for 8 months to get around the weed prohibition. He even got his local congressman, who was his next-door neighbor, to write a letter of recommendation. Nope. He went to work for Google for a few years, then started his own fintech at 25 that iPod 2 years after that, and now has a market cap of $17 billion. The FBI is one of their clients and pays him millions a year for his company's services. This is the kind of multi-dimensional stupidity game our government plays at its own detriment.